Okay, in this final new character controller tutorial, we're going to make a camera that follows the character, but that you can control. Um, I suppose we'll make it so you can control it with the mouse. Okay, so what this means is, and I'm going to go into Photoshop here. So what we're going to do is we have our character. Stop using the mouse. We have our character. Okay. And we have a camera. What we'll be able to do is, if you move the mouse left or right, you'll be able to spin the camera uh, in a circle around the player. Okay? And so what that means is the camera is going to be a certain distance away and up, but they're going to spin around the the player's center. Okay, so they're going to spin around this axes here, which will be the player's up axes really. But so what we're going to do actually is we're going to create an empty object that's going to follow the player precisely, and the camera is going to be a child of that object, and then we'll spin this object, and when that object spins, the camera will spin in this wider arc. Okay, and I'll explain how that works in just a second. So let's go into Unity, and here's our camera, correct? So um, if we take the camera and let's create, so let's right click on the, where's our, oh, that's our old player. So where's our new player? Here's our cam relative player, right? So let's create an empty, let's right click on cam relative player and create an empty object. And so that's going to create an empty game object at the exact position that the player is at. So let's drag that out. And let's call this the camera rig, okay? Another way you can do this is if you create an empty game object that isn't exactly where the player is, you can right click on the player's transform, go to copy component, so right click where it says transform on the cam relative player, go to copy component, switch to camera rig, right click on that transform, and paste component values. So that didn't change anything at all because this game object is exactly where the player is. It doesn't need to be there, but it'll help for setting things up. Now the second thing we're going to do is we're going to take the camera and we are going to child it to this camera rig, okay? And so I just want to demonstrate this. So see our camera floating right here? If I switch to rotate and I rotate the camera, you can see that the camera is rotating around the player while staying relative distance away and pointing direction at it. So you can see over here in the game window that as I rotate around the y-axis of the camera rig, that the camera is going to rotate around the player how we want it to. Okay, so we need to put a script on the camera rig to allow us to control it with our mouse while we're playing, and also to make it so it follows the player. So what we're going to do is let's create a new script. In our scripts, we're going to create a C# script called camera controls. Okay, let's open that up. So double click on it, open it up in MonoDevelop. What we're going to do is we're going to get a couple things. So we want a public float mouse sensitivity. Okay, so that's going to let us adjust how much the camera moves. It's basically your twitch control on the mouse, right? Um, so the next thing we want to do is we want a transform, which is the player, okay? Because we want the camera rig to follow the player around exactly. So we're going to say the rig's transform dot position is going to equal player dot position. So that means that as our player moves, the rig is going to stay right where it is. But its rotation is going to stay independent, and that's very important. So what else? The other thing we're going to do is we're going to rotate the camera as we move the mouse. So we're going to say transform, and we're going to use a method called rotate around. Okay? And the point we want to rotate around is its own transform dot position. The axes we want to rotate around is the y-axis, or transform dot. Actually, we could use vector3 dot up. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll use the vector3 dot up, which is the global y direction. And the angle we're going to move is we're going to, for now, let's just say mouse sensitivity. So that, if we do this, right now, we actually haven't gotten the mouse's input yet, right? But let's, just to show off, let's see how this is going to work. So we have our camera rig. Let's add our camera control script. So if you search camera, there's camera control script. We need the player set. So that's going to be our camera relative player. And we need our mouse sensitivity. Let's leave it at 0. So if we hit play, and we try and move our player around, you'll see the camera is now following our player, okay? Just like before, but the camera's not moving. So if we mess with this mouse sensitivity value, you'll actually see the camera starts to rotate around the player, which is great. So all we need to do, so what's going on there is, as this value, as mouse sensitivity goes up and down, it's rotating either in positive degrees. If it's a positive degree, so we move at, like, say 10 degrees per second, then in 36 seconds we're going to make a full rotation. Or if we go negative 10 degrees, and I should use a different color, so we go 10 degrees per second, then we're moving that way, and we go negative 10 degrees per second, we're going this way. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually take something which is called the mouse's, I forget what it's called, but we can take the motion, like, so if the mouse starts here and then it moves this way, so if you move the mouse to the right, what happens is you get like a spike in movement here, which is in this direction, right? So as we move our mouse around, we're getting directions, right? So if we start here and go to the left, we get a left direction. Start here and go up. So we can take the left and right mouse axes, the change in the mouse axes, and we can multiply it times our sensitivity to get the camera to spin left and right. I know this is really messy, but we'll take the mouse sensitivity and get it to spin around the vector3.up from the transform position of the rig. I'm going to erase all that. We'll go through it again at the end. But so what we're going to get is we're going to get a float called mouse x, which is or we'll call it mouse horizontal. We're just going to have the camera move horizontally for now. Equals input dot get axes mouse x. And I don't think there's a space there, but we'll see if we get an error. So we get the axes of the mouse x, which is the mouse moving left and right, and we apply it to this float mouse horizontal, and now we can tell the camera to rotate based on how much the mouse is moving times the mouse sensitivity. Okay, so let's go back to Unity. Let's set the mouse sensitivity to 1. So it's good to start at 1. Let's hit play. Oops, and I'm gonna drag this over here. So I'm gonna hit play now. So I'm moving the mouse, nothing. Input X is mouse X is not set up. So this is going to give us a menu to go to, edit, project settings, input. So I'll show you where I'm getting these values from. So I go to edit, project settings, input. Here are my axes, and I'm looking for, it does have a space. So mouse space X, which is just getting the mouse movement. Okay. So let's go back to Unity, put a space in this string here. So now we have the correct axes name. Go back to Unity, see that the name here, mouse X, needs to be the same in our get axes argument. So let's hit play now. And so I move my mouse left and right, and the camera's moving with it. And notice, actually, because it's camera relative controls, so I can hold forward and steer with my mouse. So I'm just holding forward. Looks like our character is moving a little jumpily. So that might be, that probably has something to do with how we're following with the camera. So we can adjust that. Anyway, actually, let's try and fix that really quick. So let's, in our camera control, let's change update to another special Unity method called fixed update. Let's try that out. Let's see if this looks any better. Nope, that looks worse. So let's go back. We'll say late update. There we go. Late update, not fixed update. Fixed update is for physics. So now we have our rotation. If I just hold forward, the character is always going to move in the way we expect. Great, and I kind of wanted the mouse sensitivity to be up, I think. Probably about 1.7. That's it. Definitely 1.7. I don't know. 1.7 feels better. And we can jump. So notice the enemy isn't going to chase me. Not named player. I didn't tag myself as player. So if you're wondering why you can't talk to anybody, why you can't pick up these collectibles, why when you land on that it just moves out from under you, it's because our cam relative player has not been tagged player. Last thing I want to do is I want to create, actually I'll create it right where the player is. So I'm going to right click on this, create empty, to create this game object, move it out, and call this cam relative player prefab, and I'm going to drag in the rig and the player into this object. Oops. I'm going to go to project, prefabs folder, and drag out my cam relative player. So now I have my old player, which is boring, and I have my new cam relative player, which is exciting and cool because I can move the camera around, jump, and one cool thing about prefabs is we can actually set, if I set the tag on the prefab to player, if I click on this one, you'll notice it gets set there. So say we forgot and we had a bunch of levels, we can now do this. So I can go grab, oh, maybe I cannot. Oh, oops. I assigned the tag to the empty game object, not to the actual player. So I'm going to assign that there. Now I'm collecting coins, getting keys, opening doors. The walk speed feels a little slow, and I'm probably getting chumped by enemies. Oh, so my player doesn't have the resettable object on it, so I'm just getting pushed off the edge. Great. So let's go back to our prefab. Oops, on the player, add resettable object, and now we can be reset. So now our new player, with our new player controller, can do anything that our old player could do. Also, just to kind of make it a little more interesting, let's add a cube as a child to the player. Scale it down, move it forward, and give the player like a big old nose. Actually, in the Unity tutorials, they do this thing. They like to give him. You can give him. Let me see if I can do it right. If you make it nice and small and move it up like right towards the top. This, I think. And then we'll give that cube a color. I'll give it teal. So if we give this cube teal, it's supposed to kind of look like sunglasses. I don't know. It's kind of silly. Anyway, let's check it out. So now you can see that the way that you walk, your player is going to look that way. It's in the way that you use it. And gotta reset. Great. If you've gotten this far, excellent job. This has been really tough stuff, especially this camera relative stuff. I know it's really tricky, but we'll go over it in class too.